All right, Brent Porcio, TopVelocity.net, 3x pitch BioMetric analysis here of Albert. Take him through his delivery. So you can see coming out of leg lift, big kicking front leg. That leg is kicking, and you can see right when that leg starts to open up, prematurely that back leg starts to internally rotate. If we look at the hip angles before leg drive, we can see the green check is at 11 degrees of hip abduction, and the red check saying, I'm not sure that the red check is really that accurate. We're supposed to be looking at hip rotation that's saying external rotation at 25 degrees. I'm not seeing that. But you can definitely see not a lot of hip abduction, so it's not loading down. He's not loading well. I mean, he's not continuing to bring his hips forward and down at the same rate. And then that lift leg is kicking out really hard, which is causing everything to rotate early. So this would be causing early hip rotation, which potentially is going to cause everything to want to go early. So let's see how, at front foot strike, let's see what happens. Back leg does, internally rotate really, really well. So everything goes early. Back leg is able to really internally rotate. But you can see, normally when you see that much femur internal rotation, the hips have rotated. And if I look at the hip graph, we're going to see that there is 180 is right here, which is perfectly closed and hitting front foot. It's like 160-ish, so there's maybe 15 degrees, 20 degrees of hip rotation. With that much femur rotation, there should be a lot more hip rotation. So the problem is it really was the front leg flying open and extending out, and that femur rotation was just being pulled into that position. It wasn't driving into that position. Also, too, if we go back to before internal rotation and we look at the ankle extension, knee extension, the ankle extension of the trail leg, which is the yellow check, is at 4 degrees. So the ankle isn't really loading because at this point, because that front leg is so extended, the weight is being pulled off. So that was the point. Going into front foot, the back leg is just kind of being pulled off and rolling internally. So there's no force driving. So Albert needs to really work to stay closed with the front side, not allowing it to kick out, and continue to load the hips down into more hip abduction, and then try to get power into extension and internal rotation. And that, if that would have occurred at front foot strike, the hips would have been a lot more open. So if we go back and look at hip to shoulder separation, front foot strike, we can see around 19 degrees of hip to shoulder separation at front foot strike. That's very little, as you can see. Ideally, we'd want to see more like 40 plus. And then if you watch the kinematic sequence going forward, we're not seeing a good kinematic sequence. So the hips look like they wanted to peak. They should have peaked right there for a good kinematic sequence, because when you land, you want the hips peaking. But they continue to peak with the trunk because the hips were they weren't into hip rotation. So here at front foot strike, the hips are peaking, or after front foot strike, the hips are peaking, and the trunk peaked before, and there's no separation between the two. We want to see the red peak go off at front foot, then we want this green peak farther ahead, and we want the blue peak to peak with the green, which is the trunk. So we want those together. So hips and shoulders are just coming together, and the arm is dragging through that process. Also, we can look at it front foot strike. We can look at the trunk orientation. So we can see the trunk orientation is back here. So there's some contralateral tilt. And as the trunk goes forward, the arm isn't syncing up that well. We only get about 26 degrees of forward trunk tilt. So if we had more separation, the trunk would be able to move out forward or have more energy carrying it forward into pitch release. We can see the contralateral position is about 33 degrees. We also want to we don't want to go past 25 because it becomes excessive and puts a lot of stress on the arm. So we're pulling off too hard, and that's more than likely because that glove side was pulling into rotation. Front leg then, as it goes forward, doesn't get into extension. So a lot of things being left on the table. So the key would be to get that kinematic sequence better, separating the hips from shoulders. So we need to focus on staying loaded longer back leg, not kicking front side out, driving hips into front foot, separating the sequence, and then watching the trunk travel forward and get some more front leg drive as well.